We are going to begin, as always, with a round of Museum of Everything pub trivia. So, Josh, what is your first question to me?
Do you want the easy, medium, or hard version of this question?
What kind of a question is that? You're supposed to use your own discretion.
Okay, that's true. Okay. Name 15 Alfred Hitchcock movies.
Was that the easy version?
No, the hard version. That was the medium version. I used my discretion. I think you could do 20. I really do.
Okay. But, yeah, well, let's see. Dial M for Murder, Psycho, To Catch a Thief, North by Northwest, Rear Window. That's 5. Are you going to keep track of these?
I am keeping track.
Okay. Rope, Suspicion. Did I say Vertigo?
Nope.
The Man Who Knew Too Much.
Yes.
The Man Who Knew Too Much.
All right, yeah, I'll give you both of those. That's 10. Good work.
The 30s version and then his remake in the 50s with Doris Day and Jimmy Stewart. So yeah, that's
people
10.
like to say that the original was better. It's just not true. The remake
No,
is
absolutely
much better.
not.
Yeah.
The original had its moments, but no, Hitchcock got vastly better. And you would say that in the 50s he'd really hit his stride from a directorial
it's peak Hitchcock,
perspective.
the second one. It's like the classic movie snob remark to make is, the original Lady Vanishes.
The Lady Vanishes. You don't have to
Man Who Knew Too Much was better, but
you don't have to give that one to me.
Sorry, I don't know why I said that.
Because I've got other ones.
Yeah,
okay. 39 Steps.
Okay.
From that era. I'm trying to remember the name of the one with Joseph Cotton, which Hitchcock said was his favorite movie.
Yeah.
And the title isn't coming to me.
And my shadow.
Well, Shadow of a Doubt, but don't give that one to me either. I can come up with other ones.
I should remember not to sing on the podcast as a rule.
Let's see.
I mean, there are a lot of movies here you really like that you haven't mentioned yet.
That's right. Marnie, The Birds.
Okay, that's 12.
Strangers on a Train.
13. You can get this.
I know.
We should really do a Hitchcock episode. I consider you essentially the premier expert on Hitchcock movies.
I would like to think so. It's been a while since I was there for a long time doing weekly screenings of several Hitchcock movies, essentially.
Just 2 more.
Yes. The question is, which leading men am I?
You might think in terms of leading ladies.
The Wrong Man.
Yep.
And I Confess.
That's very good. Okay, that's 15. Some of the ones you left out, surprisingly. Rebecca, Foreign Correspondent, Suspicion, Saboteur, Lifeboat.
I thought I said Suspicion.
Maybe you did. Spellbound.
Interesting
Paradigm
one,
Case.
Spellbound. Terrible movie, Paradigm Case.
Stage Fright.
One of the worst. You know, the thing about the Paradigm Case is that it seems badly plotted because they literally hadn't decided what the end of the movie was going to be when they started filming. And so that's why it seems like such a confused story, added to which it is far from Gregory Peck's best effort.
Yeah, I think it might be my least favorite of his major movies.
But Foreign Correspondent
Spellbound is one of my favorites.
Spellbound is very good. Foreign Correspondent is one of my favorite films of all time, and it's generally speaking, I think, an underappreciated Hitchcock movie. We should definitely do an episode about these, but that will be for another time. All right, so I think that's 1 to me. Yep. My first question to you.
You also left out Torn Curtain, Topaz.
The late movies, Torn Curtain, Topaz, and what was the last movie, that really grotesque one?
Well, you're thinking of Frenzy. The one after that was Family Plot. Neither one very good. Family
Plot is so terrible. It was and The Trouble with Harry. I think I've gotten to 20.
The Trouble with Harry.
The Trouble with Harry. And then there's his attempt at a comedy, Mr. and Mrs. Smith, which was also unwatchably bad. Hitchcock, it's very funny. He actually had a real gift for comedy, but only in the métier of drama and suspense. When he tried to do just straight up comedy, it was a complete failure. Yeah. Anyway, that is first question to me. So my first question to you is, there are standard terminology in the English language to refer to a resemblance to a certain type of creature. You used this last night when you said Scott's hair looked leonine. That is like a lion. Yeah. Other examples are bovine, canine, asinine, if you're like a donkey. What is the word in that category that applies to a resemblance to frogs?
Rainine.
That is correct. And how do you happen to know that?
It's from P.G. Wodehouse.
That's right.
Jeeves and
It's in
Worcester.
Jeeves and Worcester. All right, very good. I was hoping you wouldn't remember that, I think. But anyway, Rainine means like a frog. So if someone looks jealous or perhaps a bit puffy, you can say that he is distinctly Rainine in aspect.
I always associate it with big bulging eyes.
Yeah, well, something like that. In any event, so 1-1. Second question to me, please.
Name at least 4 of the 7 wonders of the world. And I don't mean these stupid, trendy, modern wonders that magazines in the United Nations are always putting out. I mean the original 7 wonders of the world. But you only have to do 4.
The Colossus of Rhodes,
That's
the
1.
Hanging Gardens of Babylon, the Great Pyramids of Egypt. That's 3, isn't it?
That's 3. Yeah.
And the
You've left out one of the 4 easy ones.
I don't. Where's the 4th easy one?
The name gives it away. Well, do you really want me to tell you? I'll give you a hint.
Or something like that.
Well, there is one at Halicarnassus.
Was it a mausoleum?
Yes, the mausoleum at Halicarnassus. That's 4. You definitely got that
Thank
one.
goodness, because I don't think I would have gotten a 5th.
The one I thought you would get as your 4th is the lighthouse at Alexandria.
Oh, yeah. Well, nope.
And the other 2 are the Temple of Artemis at Ephesus and the statue of Zeus at Olympia.
And who originally assigned the 7 wonders of the world?
There is no consensus because a lot of the ancient sources that written around the time of Alexander's conquest of the world give slightly different lists of 7.
All right. So there's no consensus. There's no consensus on who came up with this term, but there's only one wonder of the world that you can still see.
Well, that's mostly true. There's only one wonder that you can still see intact, but you can actually see much of the lighthouse of Alexandria in the harbor of Alexandria. It just fell over, and a lot of it is still there.
When did it fall over?
I think it was during the battle between Mark Antony and Cleopatra versus Octavian. I think it may have been destroyed during the fire that succeeded that fight, but it may have been an earthquake.
Quite a long time ago, then.
According to Wikipedia, it was destroyed by an earthquake. Wow, actually in the 14th century, so very late.
All right, so we could.
I guess it was the Library of Alexandria that's believed to have been burned during the final battle of the Roman Republican Civil War, the final Roman Republican Civil War.
All right, so 2 to me. My second question to you. Are you ready?
Oh, yes.
What character in Shakespeare dies on his birthday? There is only one.
Yeah, no, I'm.
And I thought it would have been obvious, actually.
Cassius.
That is correct. Cassius does die on his birthday. Who? Oh, by the way, who does he have kill him? You don't have to remember this. You already got the question correct. But and he says, "So and so, this is my birthday. This very day was Cassius born." You know.
Yeah.
And
Marsala.
that's Messala. Close
Messala.
enough. Yes, Messala. Time has come round, and where I did begin, there shall I end. My life is run as compass. Just Cassius is my favorite character in Shakespeare, I think.
Well, it's a good choice. The sad thing is that in real life,
Let's not damage our heroes here. I assume
no.
that
It's just his suicide was completely unnecessary.
That's even worse.
He misread the situation on the battlefield and killed himself very quickly, concluding that the battle was lost. But in fact, the battle wasn't lost. As I recall, the troops he believed were Roman troops were actually Brutus's Roman troops, which he believed were Antony's troops, were actually Brutus's troops. Brutus had surprisingly broken through Antony's lines quickly.
Maybe he was just a wary of the world.
Well, yeah, the funny thing is that then Brutus, in the play, it seems like Brutus then kills himself right away. In real life, according to Plutarch, Brutus then went off into the mountains with a couple of friends, and they spent a day or 2 getting drunk and writing poetry about how great they were, and then he killed himself.
That's such a Brutus thing to do. I just want to point that out.
Yeah, Brutus was sort of. I mean,
I'm not a Brutus fan.
We talked about this on the podcast quite a lot. That
so maybe this is
we're
enough.
Not Brutus fans.
In any event, that's 2 and 2 then. So you have a third question to me?
I do. Name any three pre-Norman conquest kings of England.
Darn. Okay, a lot of them had an Ethel in their names.
Yeah, yes, they did.
Like Ethelred and Ethelstan.
Ethelstan is one. There is an Ethelred too. But can you give me his sobriquet?
The Unready.
Yes, very good. So that's 2. Ethelstan is widely considered to be the first king of England. This is wrong, for reasons that I can explain if necessary. Ethelred the Unready was the last king of the original English dynasty before the Danish conquest, but not before the Norman conquest.
Because you bring up the Danish conquest, I will say King Canute.
There you go. So that's 3. You left out a few I thought you might do. I mean, Harold Godwinson obviously was the last one who lost to William the Conqueror at the Battle of Hastings, but there was also Edward the Confessor, and Edward the Martyr, and Edward the Elder, who I thought you might mention.
When was Edward the Confessor
Alfred the Great
king?
Was
he's the oldest king buried in Westminster Abbey, I believe.
Edward the Confessor was the king whose death triggered. He died, I believe, on Christmas Day, 1065.
Yeah, he was the last pre-Norman king.
Well, no, Harold Godwinson was, but his death triggered the succession crisis that led to Harold Godwinson, William of Normandy, and Harald Hardrada, the king of Norway, all having legitimate, to a certain extent, claims to the English throne. And the reason, really, obviously William was a great general, and that's largely why he won at Hastings. But I would say perhaps the largest reason that William beat Harold Godwinson at Hastings is because just 2 weeks earlier, thereabouts, Harald Hardrada had invaded in northern England, and Harold Godwinson had put on an incredible forced march up to Stamford Bridge, where he defeated Harold Hardrada. And then he had to march all the way back to the south coast where the Normans were invading, and subsequently lost his battle. It's a very, very interesting year, 1066. I really can't recommend it enough to fans of good years.
All right, so that's 3 to me.
But you didn't mention Alfred the Great, which
sorry,
which denied me the chance to explain to everyone why Alfred the Great was the first king of England rather than Athelstan. But we can go into that some other time.
That would be, I think, a separate episode as well, if you want to discuss pre-Norman kings. I'm just going to give you your third question, which is, what 3 things were ancient kings of Israel explicitly forbidden from doing?
Building temples elsewhere besides Jerusalem?
Nope. There are, I will say, let me gloss this question a little bit. There is a passage that we will have recently encountered, perhaps, where it says, at some point, this is Moses at the end of the Bible speaking to the Jews, at some point you are going to want to have a king like the surrounding peoples. You can appoint a king selected from among you as designated by God. He has to make sure he does not do these things. He cannot do this, this, or this.
So he cannot collect excessive horses.
That's correct. 1.
Thus enriching himself excessively. I mean, is that 2, enriching himself excessively?
Yes, I'll count that also as 2, because he can't collect too much gold or silver. There's a third thing.
He can't have a harem?
Yes, he cannot collect excessive wives. These 3 things are explicitly forbidden from kings of Israel, and the idea, which I think was a very sound guiding principle, is that the heads of society should not make themselves haughty and give themselves put on airs and think they're better than everyone else. And even though they will have at their disposal the ability to collect essentially arbitrarily great fortunes and so forth, they should resist the temptation to do so. It's something that all politicians would do well to follow as an example, and that no one does. But of course, the ancient kings of Israel didn't follow it either.
Yeah. A modern example might be something like you can't vote on public transport and then take motorcades everywhere. You can't institute airport security lines and then skip them because you're a member of Congress. And you can't vote on public schools and then send your kids to expensive private schools. Something like that. All right, well,
as irksome as this is, we have to move on to tiebreakers then, because that's 3 and 3. So you have a tie-breaking question for me?
Yes. There are... The consensus list of the 12 Olympian gods has 2 different number 12s. But name 8 of the 12 Olympian gods.
I would like to say, a priori, that classical Greece is not my area of expertise. I mean, you're much more expert in it than I am. So I will attempt this, but I think that you are probing, perhaps unfairly, a rather weak spot of my historical knowledge. All right, fine. There are 2 versions of one god, and I assume you're not talking about the Roman versus Greek nomenclature.
No. There are 11 gods who everyone agrees on, and then there's a 12th god, and no one. There are 2 camps about equal in size as to who the 12th god is. But you only have to name 8 of these. You know what? You only have to name 6 of them.
That's okay. Fine. Zeus and Hera,
Okay,
and
that's 2.
Athena,
That's 3.
and Mercury,
That's Roman.
or well, Mars,
It's also
also
Roman.
Roman. Yes, but they had equivalents. Don't they count? They are gods in the Greek pantheon, even if they're in the Roman pantheon. You have to admit that Jupiter, Mars, and Mercury are Roman names for Greek gods. Is that not correct?
Yes.
So why can't I just invoke them?
Because it's not the question I'm asking you.
You asked me about their gods. You didn't say which naming system applied.
You just say, there's Steve and Bob and Henry.
No, but no one treats Steve, Bob, and Henry as equivalent names of Greek gods.
Well, next time I'll ask you to name the planets by their Greek names.
The problem is if I had been recently reading the Iliad, or if I had gone to see the Odyssey in theaters, perhaps this would probably be pretty easy.
This is pretty easy.
Is it though?
Yes, very.
Okay. No, it's not.
I mean, when I tell you their names, you're just going to be like, oh, yeah, of course.
Yeah, I know. I'm just, what can I say? I'm not in a Greek mood at the moment.
Well, I do not think this was at all an unfair question. I think as an educated man, you should be able to answer this.
Yes, I happen to agree with you. It's not an unfair question. It's just one that I'm not going to do well on today. So just give them to me, because I don't feel like plumbing the depths of my mind.
All right, so you named Zeus, Hera, and Athena. There
Yes.
are also Poseidon, Demeter, Apollo, Artemis, Ares, Hephaestus, Aphrodite, and Hermes. And then the 2 who are disputed for the 12th spot are Hestia and Dionysus.
Okay.
And as someone who has seen all of these figures in art many, many times, in Renaissance art, I feel like you probably should have known these.
Okay, fine. I have a tie-breaking question to you, and if you name it correctly, you can win this round. It is to name 6 of the 9 men involved in the 1881 gunfight at the OK Corral.
6 of the... How many were total?
9.
Okay, so Doc Holliday.
Mm-hmm.
There were the brothers, Wyatt Earp, Robert Earp.
Nope.
Henry Earp.
No. And
James Earp.
No, you can't really just list first
Ebenezer
names, although
Earp.
they did have unusual first names, so it's not likely that you're going to
Can't I just say the Earp brothers?
Yeah, if you like. I'll tell you what, you can say the Earp brothers if you can tell me how many Earp brothers there were.
3.
Okay, that's correct. So we'll give you the Earp brothers, Wyatt, Morgan and Virgil, I believe.
Morgan, and I probably could have come up with that.
And Doc Holliday. So that's the complete good side.
Right.
And I think I asked you to name 6, so you have to give us 2 of the so-called bad guys, or the cowboys.
I think one was named Cobb.
Nope.
The Ringo Kid?
No. Wrong
Really?
gunfight. There are 2 pairs of brothers and 1 loner.
I feel like one had a Jeff in his name.
I have to say, I rather thought you would get this one.
I'm not really a huge West guy, Wild West.
I don't know. I feel that you have regaled me with stories of Doc Holliday, or maybe you just thought he was an interesting character, which he was.
Yeah, no, I have. Yeah, it sort of depends what I'm reading, but I suppose that's true for you in ancient Greece, too. I don't know.
There were the Clanton brothers, the McClory brothers, and then Billy Claiborne.
The Clanton, I should have gotten that. Just
and as
because,
much as this was really a gunfight over the town's decision to confiscate lawfully held firearms, it could be argued that, the question of which were the good guys is a little bit murky, actually, in this case. But
it's an interesting take on the...
I don't
disagree.
Neither of us got a tie-breaking question, which means you have to ask me another question.
Yes.
Are we scraping the bottom of the barrel here, question-wise?
A little bit. It's just that I didn't have time to look up some of these
excuses.
To make sure the answers I remembered were accurate. All right. When Archimedes discovered that he could determine the volume of an object by the water it displaces, what did he shout?
Eureka.
Yes, correct. All right, good work.
He was awfully pleased, as
Well,
I gather.
understandably.
Yes. Then the question, though, arises, the story goes that he was getting into his bathtub and noticed that he displaced an amount of water, presumably spilling it over the edge of the bathtub. That was more or less equivalent to his own body mass as it submerged in the water. And the question is, what careless or overeager servant would have filled up his bathtub right to the very brim?
Well, maybe Archimedes just liked to jump into the bathtub.
It's possible, but then he couldn't possibly have observed the equivalence in volume displaced.
Well, it may have occurred to him anyways. I mean, the question isn't just the volume of water displaced, but the density of the object displacing it. The question was to figure out how much gold was in a crown, and he determined because gold was heavier and denser that if the crown displaced this much area, then it should weigh this much, which proved that it was an alloy of gold and something else, silver, presumably.
Very good.
Okay, so good work. You're one ahead again.
All right, I need to check something very quickly. Which French cathedral memorialized the oxen that helped drag stones to the building site by placing statues of the carved oxen in the towers thereof?
First of all, given the golden calf story, I don't think any cathedral should really have statues of oxen in it. It seems strangely
Quite
pagan.
possibly not. However, the
Baal
oxen
worship.
did a great job, apparently.
Yeah,
They
well,
and the master masons wished to honor them, and so they are the only statue of cows you'll see perched in a Gothic cathedral. They are
What part of the cathedral did you say they were in?
in the towers.
In the west fronting towers.
But, the towers on either side. I'd say the northern fronting towers. Since,
Well, but the cathedral points west.
yes,
east
but it's the northern tower of the west facade
of a French cathedral.
of a French cathedral.
Chartres?
Nope. It is Laon. So, incorrecto. Does that mean I win this?
It does. Good work.
Finally. All right, good. Without trying to be tedious, Laon is not perhaps one of the greatest cathedrals, but I always thought that the cows or the oxen at top of the tower was rather a nice touch.
I don't think I've ever been there.
Neither of us have been, but it is in our big yellow book of cathedrals. So, all right, let's move on to the subject at hand.